Welcome back, everyone. Let's continue with amazing talks. I guess you had a coffee and you are ready now to listen and ask after. Our next speaker is, he's a keynote speaker, Tobias Zwingmann. Tobias is an author and managing partner at Rapid AI. He is also author of AI-powered business intelligence and an internationally recognized AI ML expert with over 50,000 followers on social media. In his role as managing partner of Germany-based Rapid AI, Tobias helps companies adopt AI and ML technology faster while achieving meaningful business value. In this presentation, you will discover the typical anti-patterns that lead to AI projects failures and budget drains. From there, we'll shift to focus to proven strategies, established best practices, and key insights to ensure your AI initiatives will actually get you off the ground and produce meaningful value for your business. Tobias, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for attending the talk today. Really excited to see so many people here in the room. Thanks for being here. And the talk today is, as already announced, how to fail with AI and how to succeed. So the first half will be about showing some anti-patterns and things that you should not do when you want to apply AI in your business. And the second part will be more geared towards the best practices. Quick big background about myself. I think did an amazing job introducing me, so I don't think I need to go more into detail into that. Just basically, I run an AI consultancy. I help both small and large companies adopt AI, help them from the very first stages, identifying use cases, back to through implementation projects and scaling AI solutions through their business. I write a lot. I write a newsletter. I write on LinkedIn. I write a book. I'm currently writing my second book. So if you want to follow me, please follow me on LinkedIn and follow my writing there. So always feel free to connect. So my goal for you today is two things. I want you to understand how to use AI to grow your business. And second, I want you to understand how to avoid the biggest pitfalls with AI. And for this, let's start our first part, how to fail with AI. And for this one, I would like to play a little game with you. So please join me for this game. And the game is called Imagine You're a CEO. Some of you don't need to imagine, which is good. So, just pretend being yourself, that's fine. But if you're not a CEO, close your eyes, whatever. Imagine you're a CEO, something like, any company, maybe 50 employees, up to 1,000 employees. Can even be more employees if you feel confident about that. So think you're a CEO, you're attending a tech conference or any other event, and you hear about that crazy thing, AI. Phase one starts. Phase one is you get excited about AI. So imagine you hear a competitor of yours talking about how he is using ChatGPT daily to do whatever, writing poems, writing business plans, adopting that in their business. Maybe they even already have an AI use case prototype in their business. And you're like, dang, I need to do something with that AI thing too. So you're really, really excited. And what do? Because you're a manager and your job is to fix problems. Now you're going to fix problems with AI. Every problem that you see in your business, you look at it through the AI lens. Especially technical problems. So everything related to IT, that's a very good use case for AI, because AI and IT, these are very similar things, right? So you think about all your crappy dashboards in your company, no one's looking at them, nobody understands them, people are complaining about that. So what do? AI, right? That could be a good solution for this. Or do you remember your poorly performing online marketing campaigns? Yeah? What do we do with them? AI, exactly. We use AI for this. We are excited. AI can help us do so many things. And not only in the physical space and the digital space, but also in the physical space. So let's say you're a manufacturer and your production quality sucks, or your quality management kind of sucks, or your supply chain is kind of not working ideally. What do? There's probably an AI solution for that on the market, right? So you get the picture. You think about AI. AI is your savior to transform your business into the next generation and finally get to the next level of transforming your company. If you're at this stage, congratulations, you have successfully finished phase 1 about being excited about AI, and you're now entitled to enter phase 2. And phase 2 is you want to execute, because you're a manager, right? We're not only thinking and brainstorming, we also want to execute. So let's execute on AI. But you know what? AI, that's kind of an IT thing, right? And we are not technical people, right? So what do? We don't involve with IT, right? It's difficult, right? It's very draining, and we don't like IT. So what do? We leave it to the IT guys, right? So IT guys, they take care about AI. They should do it for us. But you know one thing? There is actually this concept, you have heard that in some other conference before, that there's this special role out there on the market. It's called data scientist. And man, that sounds really good, right? If you're a data scientist, you can probably help our company with AI. So what do? You go out there on the market and you hire your first data scientist on the market. And you're really excited about that, about bringing your data scientist into your business. But you know what? You don't just hire any data scientist, right? You could hire anyone, but you have never hired that role before. So you want to hire not any data scientist, but you hire the data scientist who's available, actually. So this could be anyone in your company who says, oh, I'm kind of interested in data, or someone on the market who just says, oh, I'm actually ready to take your low-ball offer and join your company and getting my first data science role. So that could be it. Yeah, I've experienced some of these situations before. So in any case, you hire your first data scientist. Congrats, he's joining or she's joining your team. And then, after some while of onboarding, a couple of weeks pass, people need to get onboarded into the organization. You have your first meeting. You have your first meeting with the data scientist, the manager of the data scientist, some IT people on there, and you wonder, how do we finally get our whole AI projects off the ground? You have so many crazy ideas about AI, how do we kick things off? And now you have this meeting, and there are different proposals in there. So some, it's always a good idea to hire a consultant, because why not, right? We can just hire a consultant to help us with that. Or we could buy some software. This is also a great opportunity, always buy some software at the beginning. Or your data scientist, maybe he's kind of smart or she's kind of smart and says, oh, actually, this is a pretty big task. Maybe we need to hire a team for this. And you say, no way, we don't hire a team. That's just too much budget. We don't have the budget, right? So you don't hire a team. And okay, so what do? You buy your data scientist a bunch of books that they request. You wonder whether they are biologists or what, but you don't care. You just give them the books and everything. And what do? You heard that experts, you read that somewhere, experts, they need focus time. They need to be deep down to something. So you do one thing, which is you give them some time, right? You give them some time. So time to think, time to scope out projects, write requirements, do the magic, whatever. You give them some time. So and with that, you successfully qualify for phase 3. And depending on your organization, this might be 3 months later, or 6 months later, or 12 months later. This is a correlation between organizational size and time it takes to check in back again. And after this time has passed, you do one thing, you go back and you check in with your data scientist, how things are going. And this is your data scientist after 3 months or 6 months, explaining their data project. So they come back to you and say, oh my God, we have so many problems. And you just hear things like data quality and data management and data governance and no people and no resources and everything. They sound devastated. And you think, oh my God, where have I been? Where am I currently? What's happening? But the good thing is, data scientists, they tend to be very enthusiastic and, they want to prove themselves. So what do? They show you a thing called a Jupyter notebook. And in this Jupyter notebook, they apply their magic. They show you some regression lines, some curves, some models, whatever that is. And you think to yourself, maybe this is actually going to the right direction, right? I mean, they have this fancy thing called the Jupyter notebook with these kind of weird-looking lines of codes in there. So, yeah, not too bad, actually, right? So what do? Let's give it some more time. Let's just let them do their thing. They are just new, they onboarded, so maybe 6 months or so have passed until now. So let's give them some more time. Okay. Let's say 6 months have passed, 7 months has passed. What do you get from your data scientist as a next thing, as a next deliverable? you get this resignation letter. Data scientist got a job offer from a different company. Oh, things are much better over there. Like the grass is always greener on the other side. So your data scientist has like a 4 weeks notice period or something. They just go. They are off. So what's left? You are left with a AI project which is somewhere hanging. No one responsible for this. There is no documentation. There's no data scientist. And I mean, well, this is how your AI project looks like, right? So, and everyone in the company says, oh man, this is just such a big show, right? We don't want to do this. This is like, just costing us so much money, trouble. We are fighting over different things. And you as the CEO, you say to yourself, I will never, ever do this again. Like AI, for me, this is done. Like we will never do this again. Well, at least until the next hype kicks in, right? And you hear the next tool and the next shiny toy out there, which you think might, maybe we should focus on this right now. So these are the stages, and this, my dear CEO friends, are the 3 phases of going through a totally failed AI project. And what I try to demonstrate to you here are essentially these components, these core components of failed AI projects. And again, I've seen them so many times, and so many companies are falling for these traps and falling for these anti-patterns. It all starts with a big wave or cycle of hyped expectations. People just think, okay, it can do everything, and the expectations are really, really high. This pretty quickly matches undelivered results, and then this whole thing is fueled by a lack of clear objectives and also a lack of enough funding and enough resources in both capital, but also human resources. And finally, there's only a very loose integration or poor connection to your existing business. So that's, my dear CEO friends, how not to do it, okay? So please don't do it this way. And with that in mind, let's shift gears to how we should actually approach AI. And the good thing is, from all the AI projects which I have done and where I've helped companies both identify use cases and go through the first ideation phase and implement projects successfully, I think, and this is the good news, it boils down essentially to 6 simple steps that you need to take. So if you follow these 6 steps, there's no guarantee that the outcome is really good at the end, but the chances are much, much better. So, and my goal for you today is to quickly walk you through these 6 steps, explain you what they are and how you can apply them for your business. Okay? Step 1. And I'm really sorry about that. You need to understand AI. So this is, for some people, this is kind of an revelation, and they don't want to do this. And I get it. Like, we're not technical people, but you have to at least understand AI at a very high level. You don't need to know how to implement it. You don't need to know how to build AI systems, but you need to understand what's behind the buzzword. And there's so many different possibilities or so many different options of how to explain AI. But I found one particular set of explaining AI very practical, very pragmatic, and this is by looking at AI at the so-called 5 AI archetypes. And the 5 AI archetypes is a concept that divides AI capabilities by the data types they use. And this is not really like, you wouldn't find that in research. Like, this is coming from a very pragmatic angle, and there are overlaps, and it's not perfect, but for me, it has worked really, really well. So let's quickly go through these 5 AI archetypes and explain what these are, so you understand what AI can actually do besides or beyond PowerPoint level. So phase 1, or archetype 1, is AutoML. AutoML essentially boils down to a technique called supervised machine learning, run in an automated way, which lets you predict a column in a tabular data set. It's dead, right? You want to predict a column in your tabular data set. And this could be, for example, imagine you have a record of customer data, for example, like this one here, and you want to predict whether a certain item was purchased or not. So what you do, you look at the different columns here, every row is 1 observation, and now you can use these columns. I wouldn't use the user ID, to be honest, but the other ones, I would use them in order to model and predict what the new column, what the column purchase would be, and then when a new user comes in, you can predict the likelihood of that being a purchased item or not. Why do you need this? For example, to build a recommendation engine for your online shop. In fact, there's a ton of use cases for AutoML in businesses. You can use AutoML for time series forecasting, for predicting classes or variables in general, predicting numeric data, impute missing values, accommodation systems, I mentioned that. So there are really, really a lot of use cases in that realm. So it's a really very strong AI archetype to work with and to know. The second big category is computer vision. And for many businesses, that's actually not so important right now, but still, like, it's one of the major categories, and essentially boils down to letting machines see and interpret your images or documents in a very similar way that humans can do it, to find relevant information. And you can use that, for example, to count objects or count things in images, to erase things from images. You can also use that to classify images, remove personal data, and so on. So lots of business use cases attached to that. The next category is natural language processing. Very similar to vision, but for text, right? So we want to teach computers how to interpret text. I'll give you a little example to demonstrate that. So for example, take this sentence there on the upper right. Next summer, I want to visit Barcelona and Lyon. You could train a machine learning model to interpret this sentence, and it would be able to classify this reference next summer of saying, okay, this is kind of a date or time pointer here. And it will also be able to identify that Barcelona is a location and Lyon, despite being spelled wrongly, because normally it's spelled with an Y, it would be able to say, okay, this is not an animal, but this is actually also a city, right? So this kind of cognitive abilities, this is what you can do with natural language processing, and you can do this in order to categorize content, analyze customer feedback, summarize text, chatbots, etc. So there are lots of use cases for that. Then we have audio and speech. Very similar to natural language processing, but just working with audio data. So let's say you have some voice data, you transcribe that into text, or you have text data, and then you translate or you transfer that into a voice data set. A very common use case for example, transcribing sales calls, listening to articles, voice bots, etc. And then finally, we have arrived at generative AI, which is, when we talk about AI nowadays, we typically point to that one, to generative AI. But to me, it's just really one of those 5 archetypes, even though it's the most popular one. And what can it do? It literally can create any type of digital asset or digital content, giving some input. So there are some great use cases. You all know ChatGPT, generating text outputs, image outputs from text inputs. But there are also like plenty of other softwares or applications that are based on generative AI, like Synthesia here for digital video avatar generation, for example. And because generative AI is so popular, I want to dig deeper a little bit into that and explain you exactly what it is and what you can do with that. So again, like, you need to understand, at least from a high level, what AI is. But I think after these 5 or 10 minutes, you have a pretty good foundation for this. So what's so special about ChatGPT in particular? Actually, the most special or amazing thing about ChatGPT is its user adoption. That's the one thing that sets ChatGPT out from all other applications out there. The model is good, yeah, I know. But it also was the fastest app ever to reach 100 million users. It only took ChatGPT to 2 months to reach those 100 million users. And if you compare that to a wildly popular app like TikTok, that's even growing faster than TikTok at the beginning. And to be fair, growth has kind of slowed down meanwhile, and this is due to various factors. We have GPT-4 or GPT-3 integrations and more applications. There are more competitors on the market, so growth has slowed down. But the growth that we have seen with ChatGPT has been unprecedented in software history. So this is important. And this is also why this kind of technology or this software is so hyped right now. It's just so popular. And maybe you have realized I've been throwing a lot of terminology at you right now. I'm throwing a lot of words to you and a lot of terminology, which some of you might find really confusing. So I thought to myself, okay, how can we kind of categorize these terms a little bit to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing when we talk about ChatGPT, for example. So I created this little chart here, which should help you to break down and organize the major concepts and terminologies in AI and going from high-level AI to ChatGPT. So let's do that. It just takes 30 seconds. So on the outer shell, we have AI as the umbrella term. And in this AI concept, there are 2 big fields. There's general artificial intelligence, this kind of superhuman AI that can solve any problems. This is like the research case. And there's narrow AI. Narrow AI is what we have currently. Narrow AI is a technology that helps you to solve a very specific problem, like, for example, predicting a token in a sentence. This is what ChatGPT is doing. So we have narrow AI. Within narrow AI, we have machine learning as a technology that has enabled narrow AI. And then within machine learning, we have a technology called deep learning, which is essentially just a very complex and fancy way of doing machine learning. And then within deep learning, we have generative AI, which is as I mentioned before, a certain type of that which is able to generate digital content. And within generative AI, we have large language models, which is a type of generative AI that is able to generate text as an output. And within large language models, we have the so-called generative pre-trained transformers, GPTs, which is a special type of architecture which just performs really well. No one really knows why, but it just works. And then we have GPT-4 as the best performing GPT-based architecture out there on the market. And then finally, ChatGPT is the web application on top of that allows you to access this GPT-4 or GPT-3 model. So this is just very important terminology. So because when you hear people speak about ChatGPT, you often find out they actually don't have a clue what that is and what's behind that. But that's the kind of terminology behind that and how it works. And as I see it right now, also from a practical aspect, there are 4 super categories of generative AI use cases. So 4 super categories of things that you can do with generative AI. The first one is summarization and expansion. So imagine you have either a very long text or very long content. You want to just summarize that to a single line or just some bullet points, or going the other way around, expanding that. That's the first big category. The next one is digital asset creation, creating images, videos, audio files. This is also possible with generative AI. The bottom part is also a huge topic right now, search and knowledge retrieval. Everyone who has heard about the RAG architecture, like retrieving documents from your organization, chatting with your documents, this is all search and knowledge retrieval. And finally, we have code generation. Almost, I would say, like over 90% of all practical business use cases that we find out there right now for generative AI belong to one of those 4 categories. And there are also like 3 categories which are not good use cases for generative AI. The first one is factual use cases, and I would combine them with the second one and saying there is no single right answer. And this is what generative AI separates from the other 4 AI categories we have seen so far. Remember the AutoML use case where we had the table with the labels in there of whether the customer purchases something or not? There is a true fact. At some point in time, we can tell if the customer purchased that or not. And also there's a definitive label if the customer purchased that or not. There's a single true answer. And if you are in a situation where there's a single true answer to an output, this is probably not the best or ideal use case for generative AI, because generative AI is not deterministic. When you put in the same data or the same prompt and the same model and you run it 10 times, you will have slightly different outputs. Maybe for very simple tasks, it's the same, but if you scale it up to, let's say, 100 runs or 1,000 runs or 100,000 runs, you will find some variability in there. And you don't have that in all the other 4 AI archetypes. If you use classical AutoML, classical supervised learning for computer vision or natural language processing, it's deterministic. Every time you put in the same data and the same model, you get the same output. And for some business use cases, you need to have that reliability. And that kind of rules out a lot of generative AI use cases. Also, it's not really good at math, but you can use that with plugins. So what does it mean? Now we see different types of use cases in the business, which I call assistant, co-pilots, autopilots, and agents. They are classified by the amount of integration in your infrastructure and the amount of automation of the tasks that they can do. And this one, actually, I think that's the only one you need to remember for now, because everything on the right side is pretty advanced right now. But this one is really important. If you want to start out with generative AI, look at those so-called augmented use cases. Augmented use cases are use cases where the human is always in the loop. Imagine ChatGPT, that's an assistant, low integration, low automation. You have some web service, you need to log in with a separate username and password. You copy-paste stuff, you get stuff out from there, paste that in your other process. So it's very manual, but it works. And then you can do that with a higher degree of integration, which would be something like a Microsoft Copilot in Outlook. It automatically gets your emails, but you still need to press the button and say, oh yeah, I want to have this suggestion here. And this is currently the most powerful of AI use case, generative AI use cases out there on the market. So focus on these at the beginning. And once you traverse through this chart, you can start here, move to co-pilots, move to autopilots, and then finally we have this very state-of-the-art research field right now, which is agents, that allows generative AI models not only to generate an output, but to trigger some actions in your systems. So, but again, this is really advanced, state-of-the-art. I would not recommend starting from there on the top right. Chances of failure are really, really high. And this actually is what I think you need to know about AI right now. Of course, you can dive deeper, but from a business standpoint, from a business perspective, I think this gives you a very good foundation and sets you apart from most people outside who actually don't know what AI really is. So this is the principle where it all boils down to. So, and once you have that, we can enter step 2. And step 2 is now, only now that we have this high-level understanding what AI is and what it can do, we take a look at our business, and ideally, we take a look at our business processes, because it turns out the most easy way to AI implementation is to come from existing business processes, or if you talk about products, from existing user stories, and just thinking how you can improve these business processes and business stories or user stories. So, for example, I scribbled a sample business process here for RFPs, request for proposal, because I think every business has dealt with RFPs now and then. So, this could be a sample business process for an RFP, right? You have an RFP coming in, you need to send a quotation in order to get a contract or get a new client. So first of all, you analyze the RFP, you form a team, then you plan, do the outline, you create the content, customize it, you finalize it, and finally you send it off, and then you make a debrief depending whether you got the contract or not. And now you just go ahead and think to yourself, okay, where are problems? Because if there's not really a problem in the process, then no need for AI, right? So first of all, we need to figure out a really good problem. So the easiest thing to do this, you just go ahead and say, okay, one of the biggest pain points here is, for example, the first stage, to say it's very difficult currently to understand these complex RFP requirements. So it's quite common that an RFP has 90 pages documents attached with all kind of regulations, deadlines, things you need to fill out. So if you bid for a project that has, I don't know, a million plus size, then it's very common that RFP proposals are really, really complex. So you could go ahead and just fill out and make some ideas of what are the actual pain points in this process right now. And once you have that, once you have scribbled that down, which probably takes you an hour or maybe a half a day, depending on the complexity of the whole process, simple next step, number 3, is you map that with AI capabilities. So, and mapping this with AI capabilities, it can be really as simple as a simple table. So I did this here. So on every column, we have one of the AI archetypes, like AutoML, computer vision, NLP, audio, speech, and generative AI. And then we have our different process steps here on the rows. And what we do is we just simply figure out if there's any AI capability that can help us to solve the pain points which you have in these steps. So for example, we could use AutoML to predict the time required for each section based on the past proposals, helping in time management, and also making a decision if it's actually worth working on the RFP. Because sometimes you figure out that the whole effort to prepare the RFP isn't really worth the outcome, and especially the profit margin that you're operating for this RFP for. So this is where AI potentially could help you. And you will also figure out what kind of AI capabilities are not necessary. Like, for example, this isn't really a good use case for computer vision, maybe here in this case. So we know that this could be something that's ruled out. And shameless plug, there's of course a bit more advanced methodology to that. It's called the AI design sprint. I do that a lot with clients. It takes 2 days going through these processes. This is just a very high-level overview of it works. But you can go much deeper and much more structured in a much structured way. And you can find that on aidesignsprint.eu. And once you have that, the mapping of your problems and the mapping of the capabilities, now it's a time to think about use cases. And to think about use cases, I mean not overthink use cases. Please keep it quite simple, keep it quite really basic level at the beginning. So if you ask me, this is how a very simple use case fact sheet should look like. You have one field which is describing, you give it a title, that's always good for communication. Then you describe what this use case should do. Then you assign a business impact on a very rough score of low, medium to high, some reasoning why you think it's medium or high, and a rough feasibility. And of course, at this stage, it might make sense to bring experts in if you have no internal AI knowledge whatsoever to assess whether the feasibility of this use case is actually high or low, or if you need to build a custom software, train a custom model, or if you can use something from the market. But this is how a very basic use case fact sheet summary could look like. And now you take these and you start to prioritize and to prototype. And how you do this, you just simply create a very simple chart where you say, okay, these are every bubble here is a potential use case I could do. We just map them out by feasibility on the x-axis and business impact on the y-axis. And then you will find a subset of use cases here on the top right, which are, as I would say, good candidates for prototyping. These are not use cases which you should directly take and move into production, but these are good use cases which are good candidates for prototyping. Because before you now take the next leap in and implement these, I recommend you making one more step, which is check for the 2020 rule. And the 2020 rule means, is this use case, are you able to build this use case in 20 days or less, or with 20K of budget or less? If this is not possible, then the prototypability of this use case is not really given, and that means you would need to make a lot of investment up front in order to push that use case forward. And this kind of like automatically rules out all the use cases where, for example, you need to collect data for a year, or train a model over a long period of time, or make any significant upfront investments. So once you have this nucleus of what I call atomic AI use cases that you can build in less than 20 days, at least for the first prototype, and less than 20K, you have a good candidate of actually moving that forward for building the first prototype. And this is how it could look like. For example, in this RFP proposal, I took a sample RFP for a public project here in Germany. It comes with something like 60 plus PDF documents that you would normally read through. So what can you do with it? Of course, like, it's very easy nowadays to build a very simple chatbot on top of that. And in an ideal world, we would see a video now playing of the chatbot. But I think you get the picture, right? How it should actually look like. So we would have a chatbot which allows you to ask questions for these documents. For example, a question like, when is the application deadline? What are the required documents? In what language do I need to hand in this RFP? And so on. And setting up a chatbot like this with modern technology, you know, if you know what you're doing, it takes you 1 hour, and if you don't know what you're doing, maybe it takes you like 2 or 3 days. So this is how you can get really, really easily started with such a prototype. And now, once you have the first prototype identified, now it's time for the final, and I would say the most critical phase, number 6, which is iterate for the win. From now on, it's very important to understand that your AI project is very much an agile software project. So what you have done is you have defined the first prototype, the first use case, but you still need to figure out what is actually my end goal here, how should my final solution look like, and which small steps can I take to move into this direction. And to be like crystal clear, you know, this is why I like this picture so much. You will have a plan, but this plan, it won't work out. You can be sure it doesn't work out, especially if you just get started with AI. These plans almost never work out, so you need to kind of stay flexible. And for example, using an agile approach, thinking in terms of individual sprints, individual user stories, that's typically a very good framework to work with and advancing these use cases. Because I always say, in the end, it's about really starting small, but thinking big. Because, of course, your end goal with AI is not to build these small prototypes. You want to bring them into something bigger. But the goal is to move there incrementally and shipping something either month after month or week after week, or depending on what your organization is capable for. And make no mistake, this is not a technical issue. This is a huge cultural shift for a lot of organizations. A lot of organizations are not ready for this. So that's why I recommend, especially at the beginning, like, choose your partners in your organization wisely that are ready for this mindset. Because if you have an organization that comes very much from a traditional lens where they say, okay, we have a very clear target, like 12 months planning, in 1 year we want to have this AI which can do X, Y, Z. Like, maybe you get the trust up front to do this, but it's very, very likely that you will kind of disappoint expectations and then just be in phase 1 where, you know, people leave your team, you have a lot of internal conflicts going on and so on. So it's better to kind of like prime everyone at the beginning that you're moving in these iterative cycles. And this, essentially, are the 6 steps to take an AI project to the win, right? At the first, understand what AI is from a very high level, identify then your business processes and the business pain points in them, map those with the AI capabilities which you have just learned, analyze your use cases, prioritize them and prototype them, and then finally iterate for the win. It's no magic. The real magic is in actually sticking to the plan and executing it, because it's so easy to get distracted along the way and just do things accidentally because your CEO has heard about them or because some other competitor is doing them and saying, oh, you know, our competitor also has a chatbot on their website. We want to do this. So stick to your original plan and then go through this and iterate for this over and over again. And this is how your business will succeed with AI and how you grow your business with AI. And with that, I thank you for your attention. Thank you much. And of course, open for questions, if there are questions. Yeah. Oh.
Hi. Sorry.
Hi.
I'm a bit small. Thanks a lot for the talk. I found it very reaching. And in my case, I'm a data scientist, and I was the one hired, when you started. I was hired by a big company that heard about AI and wanted to do all of this, and I've gone over all the phases that you described. Yeah. So it's totally like this. I didn't resign, not yet, at least. But I'm trying, because you said we are very optimistic, yes, and I still believe on the change. But I want to pick up on the last point. You said if you are in a very conservative area. I am in a very conservative area, in particular aeronautical sector. And the question is, one of the things that is a big problem is how the financial cycles of companies work. Because sometimes we cannot do what you are saying, so the reason why this iterative process doesn't work is because the funding is very unstable. For example, 1 year you get a lot of funding, next year you get nothing, and this causes a lot of frustration. Do you have any advice or experience on how to navigate this financial chaos?
So, in my experience, the larger and more like traditional or complex the organization is, the more you need to balance your use cases for feasibility. So the only way which really gets your management attention is proof. You need to deliver proof that this thing is actually working and have a good business plan which is showing that. So, and the only way to show a proof is really try to trim down the use cases, and even if it makes your heart really bleed because what is left is not really that exciting anymore for you, but maybe for some managers in the organizations it will be, and take some use case which maybe you can fund within your own budget. If you take your whole company, your organizational, your unit budget, and think, okay, what kind of this could we just allocate in this current year for an AI project or AI prototype? And of course, this dramatically lowers your possibilities of what you can do. But I believe especially there are so many services out there right now, so many tools which you can just use, open source tools, but also commercially available, platforms for chatbots, for example. You can literally build a chatbot for $20. That thing like this doesn't cost you anything. And really try to scope that down. And then I think the trick is to build a good storyline, a good communication around that, and saying, okay, you see, we did this. This is the end goal. This is what we need. And then you need to find a good team inside your organization which is ready to join you for that iterative road. And mostly it comes down to IT. Mostly you need support from IT that is able to push through that project with you. So it's very much also a people game in the end, and seeing who can be your who can join you on that journey, because not everyone wants to. That's clear. Yeah. Is a data scientist department in IT or in business, organizational-wise?
Yeah, the data science department, I would say in engineering.
In engineering,
yeah, so maybe within IT.
So I think because in lots of cases, the definition is still business is doing the business, making the requirements, and then you have IT and sometimes data scientists just doing those requirements. And I think this is not working for this scenario. So you need to enter these cross-functional teams. And this is an organizational pattern where you need to break up these patterns and say, okay, let's build a group. And I see a lot of my clients doing something like this with trying to build an AI center of excellence, which in the end is like a group of 4 people, just brainstorming of things they can do, and also trying to manage those different projects that are currently going on in the organization. Because, and this is why I think it's so important to understand AI, it's such a horizontal technology that every department will come up with use cases anyway in a matter of time. So you need to kind of consolidate that and find an internal group of experts that is actually able to go through this process. And I think data scientist department could be this one, but you need to put yourself into a position to do this. I think the business will not come to your department and say, oh, you're a data scientist, why don't you drive our AI strategy forward? If they do, great. But I would try to anticipate that change and say, hey, there's this big thing happening. Why don't we build just a small group and maybe go through this process and do a 2-day workshop or interview some business stakeholders, think about their problems, map those with AI capabilities, and suddenly you have an AI roadmap on a very high level, but you have an idea of where your company can benefit from that. But it is definitely a challenge. And the more things have been cemented in an organization, the harder it is really to break up from that, especially if your resources are already allocated to big projects. And I have one client, and they are really in a very specific or very hard situation because the data scientist or the data science department is working on a project which was funded by a lot of money, which is now kind of like being disrupted by generative AI because that was just like kind of like made available in ChatGPT overnight. And this is like putting a lot of pressure on organizations, also on the like human side of things, right? Because you have to adapt change. But I think that's bottom line is you need to be able to adapt and anticipate change. That's what your organization needs to be capable of. But like we're leaving this topic of AI. Like this is a very, very fundamental principle of like digitalizing your business in your company. Yeah.
Thank you, Tobias. Our time is up. I want to thank you on behalf of the organizing team for your engagement at our conference. Here is a certificate of appreciation and hope to see you again here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.